On May 5th, 2018, the world-renowned Cedar Point amusement park would open what is widely considered the best roller coaster on the planet. Steel Vengeance would become the world's tallest, fastest, and longest hybrid roller coaster, so of course it broke tons of records in true Cedar Point style. Funny enough though, Tony Clark, the director of communications for Cedar Point, would say on social media that they would eventually top Steel Vengeance. Now that's one hell of a statement. You just opened what is arguably the world's best coaster and are already talking about the next big thing that could top it? Tony Clark, why would you say that? Because of this, coaster enthusiasts like myself can't help but speculate what kind of roller coaster could hold this potential and just what roller coaster they could be getting next in general. For the sake of this video, I'm not necessarily going to be taking that into account, but rather I'll just be talking about what Cedar Point's next coaster could be. Before we dive in, I'd like to ask if you guys could subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. The support we've been receiving as of late has been amazing, so let's keep that going. So, Cedar Point gets a new roller coaster edition every couple of years because their parent company, Cedar Fair, is willing to put all of that money into the park. Even better, 99% of their roller coaster editions break some sort of world record. This is because Cedar Point is the roller coaster capital of the world, so guests always go in expecting the craziest coasters you can find in this world. Well, they certainly got what they asked for, but this begs the question of what their next coaster could be. Something to hold up to the caliber of Cedar Point's other recent addition has to be huge, so let's look up all the possibilities and rumors, starting with the modern wooden coaster. For such a massive amusement park that boasts a whopping 17 roller coasters, you might be surprised to hear that they only have one roller coaster built entirely out of wood. This ride goes by the name of Blue Streak and was built in 1964, so by no stretch is it a modern ride. Most parks of this size usually have at least 2 wooden coasters. Not all do, but most do. Nowadays, it seems like parks are willing to sacrifice this statement by constructing hybrid coasters, which could be what Cedar Point was going for. Much of the general public probably looks at Steel Vengeance as a large wooden coaster anyways, so in reality this might not be the most appropriate or marketable option for the park. If they did go through with this though, what kind of wooden roller coaster could we be looking at? Well, I know many have been throwing around rumors that dueling GCI with inversions as presented in IAAPA in 2019 could be making its way to the coaster capital. I personally think this would be a pretty good fit, but again, it wouldn't make a ton of sense from a marketing standpoint. There's also been rumblings of an Intamin prefabricated wooden roller coaster being built here, possibly the first one with an inversion, but like I've said, the general public will probably look at it as too similar to Steel Vengeance. For now, I'm incredibly hesitant that a wooden coaster could be their next coaster edition. Maybe eventually, but not their next. Another big rumor is that Cedar Point could become the first park in the world to build a 500-foot tall roller coaster. Now these rumors were before Six Flags Qiddiya announced Falcon's Flight, but I'm not even going to be taking that project seriously for the sake of this video. Known as a Terra coaster, there are quite literally none of them in existence right now, but it is an interesting thing to think about. In 1989, Magnum XL 200 opened at the park as the world's first hypercoaster, or a coaster that stands anywhere from 200 to 299 feet tall. Then they would shatter that record with Millennium Force in the year 2000, which would become the world's first Giga coaster, or a coaster that stands anywhere from 300 to 399 feet tall. And just 3 years later, the park would work with Intamin to construct Top Thrill Dragster, the world's first strata coaster, or a coaster that stands anywhere from 400 to 499 feet tall. Cedar Point literally had no chill back then, and they would just not stop breaking height records. In 2007, however, the park took a bit of a different approach with Maverick, which would stand just 105 feet tall but would prove that a coaster doesn't need to be the tallest or fastest to be the best. Because of this, I'm doubtful we'll ever see a day when Cedar Point decides to build a 500-foot Terra coaster. Eventually, when technology seriously advances furthermore, it might be possible, but for now I struggle to pinpoint how that really could happen. The park simply doesn't have the space or the finance for such a massive ride, and the recent coronavirus pandemic doesn't help with that either. If you're a believer in that this could really happen in the not so distant future, that's great, but I am just not one of those people. Again, maybe eventually, like someday it could happen, but I'm not thinking that it'll be their next coaster. Next up is the B&M Flying Coaster, which is in my opinion the first very likely candidate on our list. This seems to be the one and only B&M coaster model that Cedar Fair just hasn't bothered to work with. I have no clue why, but maybe they've just been waiting to add the biggest and baddest one to Cedar Point. I mean, if you ask me, this addition makes total sense. What B&M coaster does the park not have that is different enough from any of their other coasters? The Flying Coaster. And better yet, Cedar Fair has a pretty strong relationship with Bolliger and Mabillard. Another strong case is that each and every single time Cedar Point has added a B&M in the past, it's broken a specific ride type's record. This could mean that the park might be looking to add the world's tallest, fastest, and longest B&M flying coaster. Honestly though, just look at Valraven in 2016, the tallest and fastest and longest dive machine, at least for its time. Same story with Gatekeeper in 2013, the tallest, fastest, longest wing coaster on Earth. Mantis in 1996, the tallest, fastest, longest stand-up coaster, and even Raptor in 1994, the tallest, fastest, longest inverted coaster. So if Cedar Point did take this approach with the flying coaster, what would they have to do to take the records? The current tallest flying coaster is Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain, which stands a monstrous 170 feet off the ground. Personally, I think it's a no-brainer that should Cedar Point build a flying coaster, they go with a 200-footer. We all know how much Cedar Point loves building their coasters 200 feet or higher. After all, they are the record holder for most in one park with 6 coasters over the height barrier. As for the fastest, you should automatically be expecting a coaster over 62 miles per hour if you're over 200 feet tall as well. The park would have to incorporate some massive inversions on it to achieve this, but I think that's exactly what the park needs to do regardless. That would differentiate the ride enough from the other B&M flying coasters in America, as only Flying Dinosaur in Japan and Starry Sky Ripper in China have the wonky B&M flyer inversions. Lastly, I wanted to talk about length. The current record holder for this is the just previously mentioned Flying Dinosaur at Universal Studios Japan. At 3,687 feet in length, I think Cedar Point would be more than capable of achieving this. They've gotten creative with fitting lengthy coasters into their park in the past, so I doubt that they wouldn't be capable of doing it again for this flying coaster. Now that we have the flyer out of the way, let's move on with the last coaster type we'll be discussing in this video. As you all know, Six Flags Magic Mountain is the closest park you can compare to Cedar Point. With a lineup of coasters that focuses a bit more on quantity rather than quality than Cedar Point, both locations have top-notch coaster lineups regardless, and both declare themselves the coaster capital / thrill capital of the world. But when you think about the one big ride at Magic Mountain that Cedar Point really doesn't have, you come across X2. Of course, there's a couple others, but they aren't relevant for this discussion. I bring up X2 because the coaster I'd really like to see come to Cedar Point is the S&S 4D coaster. Look at something like Ejinaika at Fuji-Q Highland or Dinoconda at China Dinosaurs Park, but make it even crazier. For reference, those rides are even crazier than X2, so I'm literally saying give Cedar Point the records for tallest, fastest, longest 4D coaster, one that completely shits all over X2. Out of all the options in this video, this is the coaster I want to be added the most, and what's amazing about this is that it doesn't seem like an unreasonable possibility. Yes, this is something that I could really see happening, and God help us if it does. This would become the world's most insane roller coaster ever, and even if it copied the layout of Ejinaika and just buffed up the stats a little bit to take the records, I'd be completely satisfied. After all, Dinoconda is just a shorter version of Ejinaika, but with the same layout, so I'd be totally happy with that again. Anyways, original layout or not, I think the S&S 4D would be an unbelievable fit for this park and would fit perfectly in Gemini's plot of land if that were removed. Now that we've covered the 4 biggest rumors and possibilities for what Cedar Point could be adding as their next coaster, I'd like to rank up all of them from most likely to least likely. At the top is the Flying Coaster, which would be an excellent fit for the park, but certainly would not top Steel Vengeance. The second most likely is the 4D Coaster, and out of all of these, this is the one that I could really see topping Vengeance. In third place for likeliness is the Modern Woody, and in last place is the 500-foot tall Terra Coaster. Ideally, I think at least a couple of these will be eventually built at the park, but those are my rankings for most likely additions for their next big coaster. I hope you all enjoyed this speculation video. I haven't really made many videos like this, but I did find it to be very fun to make. As always, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And of course, I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys.